Well, thank you. Can everyone hear me? Yes. Okay, well, good morning, everybody. We're delighted to see all of you here today, and I'm really excited about this session that we are about to begin, the title of which is The Power of Intentionality. And this will be a conversation with someone that I have come to know and to greatly admire, Leonte Benton. Leonte, welcome to Savannah. We're delighted to have you here today with us on this program.
Thank you, Todd.
Leonte and I met each other through the Georgia Chamber. We're both on the board there, and then we renewed that friendship through Leadership Georgia. We both have an association with that as well. And being a historian, one of the first things I like to ask people is, tell me your story. And the story that I heard was a really remarkable one, not one that I expected to hear. And we thought this would be a wonderful program for today. And so with that, Leonte, you've had an amazing climb to where you are today. Leonte, we're not going to give him a long introduction. There is a wonderful bio in here with his very handsome face pictured in here. But he is the current president of the T. Dallas Smith Company, which is one of the largest African-American owned commercial real estate companies in the United States. It's headquartered in Atlanta. But Leonte had a remarkable journey. You had a remarkable journey getting to that point. And I would like for you just to take a few minutes, we've got plenty of time, and tell us your story from the beginning. How did you get to this point and where you are right now?
Absolutely. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
Y'all are looking fantastic. You got to forgive me today. I'm kind of battling. Excuse me. I feel great, but I don't sound so great. So just bear with me. But I'm a native Atlantan. I've been in Georgia just about all of my life, and typical, low socioeconomic background. I had the misfortune of witnessing my grandmother get shot at the age of 4. My father went to prison when I was 7. Just about every male in my family before me is a convicted felon. But despite all that, I feel like I came from a place of love. And also at the age of 4, kind of backtracking, the Bank of America building was being built in Atlanta, Georgia, which is the tallest building in the Southeast. And I had a cousin that was, who had just got out of prison, who worked in construction. He was in a halfway house, and my dad would take me to visit him while he was, at work. And kind of throughout that process, I saw that building go from, this dirt lot to this massive tower. And I told my dad one day that I would own a building like that. Fast forward, when my father went to prison when I was 7 years old, my father did 10 years in the federal penitentiary. He never forgot that. And he would send me basically old articles from the Wall Street Journal that were real estate related, finance related, etc. He would send me books that were real estate related. So he was still very intentional as a father while he was in prison. Fast forward again, Mom worked 4 jobs. I went to 5 different elementary schools, so we moved around a lot. And I was arrested for the first time at the age of 14. And I got to say this as well. So the address that's on my birth certificate is basically East Atlanta, which was known as Little Vietnam in the early 80s, early to late 80s, and also into the early 90s. And from there, we basically moved around a lot: Adamsville, Mechanicsville, South Side, south of the airport. So essentially, I've lived in just about every hood in Atlanta, and I'm extremely proud of that. So fast forward, when we moved to the South Side community, I've always been a very curious person. And there was a guy who owned a liquor store, a Korean guy. And I remember when my mom would go to the grocery store, it seemed like the liquor store always had more cars than the grocery store. So at the tender age of 14, I just kind of walked in the liquor store one day, and I asked Mike if if I could come in and work, but I wanted to work for free. And the guy kind of was just like, kid, get out of my store. You're underage. No, you can't work here. But I ended up going back just about every time my mom went to the grocery store because I was just fascinated with how many cars he had outside. And at the time, just again, considering our economic situation, I was always kind of searching for ways to climb out of that situation. So eventually, because I was persistent, this guy allowed me to start helping him with inventory and taking the trash out and things of that nature. And I shouldn't say this, but I'm going to say it anyway. He started giving me like bottles of liquor in which I started to kind of give to my friends in high school. And that was kind of my first entrepreneurial and so that was my first kind of experience, getting hands-on experience, working for free, which led to my high school English teacher, who's a dear friend to this day. In fact, I saw him this past Sunday. My high school English teacher, a guy named Larry Mays, he never made more than $60,000 as an educator, but he became a millionaire by investing in real estate. So I basically, based on the experience I had at the liquor store, I asked Mr. Mays if I could come help him on the weekends for free. And he simply said, yes, if your mom, gives you permission to do so, then yes, you can come help me on the weekend. So Mr. Mays, he owned, small apartment buildings, 8 units, 10 units, 20 units. And I would just go and help him with handyman type stuff on the weekend. So that was my second experience, kind of just getting hands-on experience, working for free. And that led to, and I guess let me back up for a second. So I graduated high school with a 2.000. So I'm a proud C student. If you ask me, C students run the world. And so I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but I had a coach named Coach Bracco. So I went to a predominantly black school, and Coach Bracco was the basketball coach. He was a white guy, and no one kind of took Bracco's class serious. I mean, because we would be in class, and he would be looking at film and just doing other things that had nothing to do with school. So on this particular day, I decided to skip class, and when there was maybe 5 minutes left before it was time to transition to go to the next class, I decided to show up. And Bracco, who again, no one took serious, so I didn't think there would be any consequence. But on this particular day, Coach Bracco lost his mind. And literally, I walked into class. There was roughly 5 minutes left. He went up to the chalkboard, and he wrote the word discipline. He wrote it maybe 10 times, and he just started vigorously underlining it. And he said, Leonte, he said, let me see you outside for a second. So I step outside. I got my back against the wall. And he got this close to my face, and he said, son, what the F are you going to do with your life? And I said, I'm going into real estate, Coach Bracco. And he said, well, damn it, go into commercial real estate. And he just stormed off. That was the entire conversation. So, again, I've always had an interest in real estate, but I didn't know there was a difference between residential and commercial. So I called my godfather, who was my dad's best childhood friend, and I just asked the question. I said, dude, what's commercial real estate? And he said, man, it's, the big buildings, and that's kind of what you've always expressed an interest in. And I said, okay, perfect. So fast forward, again, I told you I barely graduated high school. My mom worked 4 jobs, 2 of which, one was a school bus driver, and she would work at Chick-fil-A in between her bus routes. And my mom would bring my teachers Chick-fil-A biscuits and Krispy Kreme donuts. So I'm a strong believer, and I know for a fact that my name and my mom's name should be on my high school diploma, because if it wasn't for her bringing those Chick-fil-A biscuits and those Krispy Kreme donuts, there was a very strong possibility that I may not have graduated. So again, the name of this is The Power of Being Intentional, and I had a mom that was very intentional despite the resources that we had. So I'm extremely grateful for her. But fast forward, I graduate high school, and I think I can just kind of hustle my way through life. And so I started applying to jobs to become a fireman, and I started taking a real estate course, and my goal was to be a fireman, work one day on, and on my 2 days off I would do real estate. And unfortunately I got sidetracked and started hanging with my friends, and they weren't necessarily the best influence. So from the age of 17 to 19, I took a bit of a detour, and my godfather, the gentleman who I said I reached out to and asked about what the difference in commercial and residential real estate was, he called me one day, and he asked me to go to dinner. And him and we talked for maybe 4 hours easily. And he basically said to me, he asked me a series of questions. And I remember one of the questions was, would you rather deal with an expert or someone that does this, this, and this? And my answer was obviously the expert. And then he started going through this whole exercise. And long story short, at that dinner, he basically convinced me to get my shit together. And what I didn't know was that evening, while him and I was at dinner, 4 of my friends who literally, I've been with these guys just about every day of my life, got arrested for armed robbery. And I just happened not to be there because this gentleman who cared for me reached out to me and asked me to go to dinner. And a week before that, I had a friend get fatally shot in the head. The next day, I go to my old high school. We've always had like an open door policy for former athletes, and while I'm in the weight room trying to just clear my head and process what just happened, my friends just got locked up. I had another friend get killed a week ago. In my mind, I got all kind of things swirling through my head at this point. And I see, while I'm in the weight room, 2 guys who I played high school football with, and they both transitioned on to play Division I football. And they encouraged me to get back in school. They basically took the path of going to a 2-year community college in San Diego, California, to get their grades together and have a second opportunity for school and football. And one of them transferred to Arizona State, the other transferred to UNLV. And they were basically trying to encourage me to get back on the football field. And I basically told them, no, I don't want to play football. My only goal right now is to kind of make some money and pursue my long-term goals. Well, I'm a very spiritual guy, and they took it upon themselves to reach out to their coach in California and basically to have him reach out to myself and another friend. And 2 weeks later, I moved to California. Moved to California and enrolled in school. But unfortunately, when I first got to California, I found myself kind of doing things that I shouldn't have been doing. So it was almost like we get there, and I'm doing the same knuckleheaded stuff that I was doing while I was in Atlanta. And I remember after this one particular scenario that I won't go into too many details about, I remember just feeling this feeling of disappointment in myself. And I literally got on my knees and I prayed to God, and I asked God to just guide my footsteps. And it was like I heard him clear as day. He said, go get you a job on campus in the cafeteria. So I got me a job on campus. And my logic there was if I could feed myself, everything else would be taken care of. So got this job. Fast forward, we invite some more of our friends from our community to come out to go to school with us while in California. And unfortunately, a similar situation happened. Because I had to go to work, I didn't go out with my friends. I had 4 friends while in California get arrested. And I had another friend get killed in Tijuana, Mexico, all around the same time. And simply because I had a job, I wasn't there. So it was like God covered me in all of these situations. Fast forward, I graduate school. I finished with like a 3.3, first time I've ever done well academically in my life. And I get accepted to UC Berkeley, and my godfather, same guy who invited me to dinner, he reaches out and he basically asked me, he said, dude, why are you staying in California? And, I'm like, the weather's great, there are no mosquitoes, like, this was the first time I interacted with folks from all over the world. I mean, I had friends that were natives of Japan, China, Turkey. I mean, it was truly just a fun place, and it basically exposed me to so many different cultures. And anyway, so fast forward, I said, I told him I love Cali, and he literally asked me the question. He said, but I thought you wanted to make a difference in Georgia. And I said, I do. And he basically suggested to me, he said, I think you should go to school somewhere in Georgia so that you can start building relationships so that when you graduate, you're not starting from scratch. And I said, it's pretty genius. So he recommended that I apply to Morehouse, which I did. I got accepted. And I kid you not, I basically flew from San Diego to Arizona, from Arizona to Birmingham, and my ex-girlfriend at the time picked me up from Birmingham and drove me back to Atlanta. But while I was on my layover in Arizona, I had a dear friend of mine reach out to me, and basically he said that he got into it with another friend of ours, and that the guy pulled out a gun and shot him in the leg. And as we were having the conversation, I just got scared. I've removed myself from my community for 2 years. Now I'm going back. I've lived in this fairy tale world in California for 2 years. Now I'm going back to potential chaos. And it was another God moment where I felt God tell me, basically, if you want to be a plumber, then you need to hang with plumbers. If you want to be a millionaire, you need to hang with millionaires. If you want to be in real estate, you need to hang with people in real estate. If you want to change the community, you need to hang with people that are changing the community. So I literally just started vigorously writing letters to everyone I could think of. I mean, I wrote Warren Buffett. I wrote Truett Cathy, who started Chick-fil-A. I wrote Arthur Blank, co-founder of Home Depot. I wrote Pete Carell, who was over Georgia Pacific at the time. I mean, I just went crazy. I wrote Tom Cousins. I wrote the mayor of Atlanta at the time. I wrote Dennis Lockhart, who was the chairman of the Federal Reserve Bank. Anyone who I could think of who I admired, who were doing things on a big level, I wrote them a letter. And surprisingly, I would say probably 98% of the people I reached out to allowed me to spend time with them. And from that experience, I noticed that just about everyone who I spent time with were involved in some form of fashion civically. So I started getting involved with the nonprofit organizations that they were involved with. excuse me. And one thing led to another. By me getting involved civically, I met other people that were like-minded. I met other people that served on the boards with them, etc. And one thing led to another. And I met this gentleman by the name of Harold Dawson, who was a real estate developer based in Atlanta, who also went to Morehouse College, who invited me to go to a gala. And at this gala, he basically orchestrated me being able to sit next to Brian Jordan, who used to play for the Atlanta Braves. Now, Brian Jordan at the time was working on some real estate development stuff, and he introduced me to Brian. And, you know, over the course of the gala, I'm kind of just talking this poor guy's ear off, asking him a million questions. And he gave me his phone number and told me to reach out to him the following week, which I did. And it was a Tuesday, if I remember correctly. I went in his office, and he literally said to me, he said, "Man, I hit baseballs for a living, but I'm going to introduce you to the guy that handles all the real estate," and which happened to be this guy named T. Dallas Smith, which is a company that I work for now. And, you know, I went in, I introduced myself, and I told the guy I was a student at Morehouse, etc. And the guy literally asked basically one question. He said, "Do you have your real estate license?" I said, "No, sir, I don't." He said, "Well, get your real estate license and come back and see me." So I went, I enrolled in the online real estate course, and I locked myself in a room for 3 weeks straight, literally didn't leave. And I came back super excited. "Mr. Smith, I got my license." This guy is literally looking at me like a deer in headlights. And I said, basically he was like, "You got your real estate license?" He was like, "Explain to me who you are." And I was like, "Dude, like, we just met 3 weeks ago. And you told me to get my license, so I'm back." He literally starts laughing at the I've never heard a laugh like this in my life. I don't know. It was like a mixture between like evil and hilarious at the same time. And he said to me, he said, "Dude, I've said that to at least 50 people in the last 30 years. He said, "No one has ever came back." He said, "That was my way of getting rid of folks." So I said, "Well, I'm back." And I said, "I will work for free." Going back to my liquor store days and working with Mr. Mays and just these other things, I said, "Dude, I just simply want to learn from you." And he said, "Okay." And he started this thing which we refer to now as Operation Get Rid of Leonte. He had me walking his dog, washing his car, house sitting. I mean, anything you could think of that had absolutely nothing to do with real estate, he asked me to do it. And I did everything with a smile on my face because I knew that this guy had already accomplished something that I wanted to accomplish. And I just simply wanted to kind of sit at his feet and learn. So fast forward, this is now December of 2006. You know, the economy's starting to downshift. And he asked me to meet him for lunch. And by this point, we've kind of created a relationship. And he basically said to me, he said, "Hey, man, I'm going back to my core business, which is commercial real estate brokerage." And he said, "If you want to roll with BJ, Brian Jordan, I understand that. But I did want to at least share with you kind of what I was up to." And I looked at him and I said, "I'm rolling with you, Mr. Smith." And from that moment, we started T. Dallas Smith and Company. And he basically committed to me that if I commit to him, that he would teach me everything he knows, not only about the business, but life. And the only thing he asked of me was to duplicate myself. If he teach me, he wants me to teach someone else. And I feel like I should probably shut up because I'm sure Todd has more questions. But in all seriousness, we've been fortunate, and we've been able to create again T. Dallas Smith and Company, and we've had the good fortune of working on transactions throughout the USA. I think we're currently doing stuff in roughly 36 states, and we're having fun, and I feel like we're changing lives as we do so.
It's an amazing story, Leonte, and I'm glad that you followed his request to teach.
Yes.
And help others to learn, because I think this is a remarkable story, and you're here today to help us to learn about your path, and then what lessons can we draw from that. So I want to leave plenty of time for questions. I want to ask you one last question, and then we'll go to questions from the audience, because I think we're wrapping up at 10:20.
Okay.
So this can't be a one-off. I mean, this is one of these stories that I think is so universally applicable. Yes. Mm-hmm. There are challenges, there are opportunities there. What do you think were the key elements? I'm listening to your story, and I'm hearing mentorship, I'm hearing discipline, I'm hearing opportunity, and you reckon, what do you think were the key elements to your, and by the way, I mean, his story's not over yet. He's not even 40 years old. He's president of this company. He's still got a long story to write, and we'll bring him back in another 20 years. And I'll be coming up here maybe with a walker at that point, and we'll hear where the rest of the story goes. But what do you think were the key elements of that story?
I would definitely say a praying grandmother. God is good. God is real, and I thank God. Although we didn't have the economic resources growing up, I never felt like I wasn't loved or supported. And so I would say that, one, but also, again, just being super intentional about everything you do. I mean, everything from your words to your thoughts to your actions, how you spend your time and who you spend your time with. I mean, you got to be intentional about every single thing. And lastly, I would just say, I like to, I guess, refer to it as patient persistence. You got to be persistent while also being patient. And I'm a firm believer, and again, I'm a spiritual man, so I believe in faith, but I also believe that faith is an action word. Thank you. To believe something is to do. So I can't say that I have faith, but my actions don't reflect that. And so I sit on the State Board of Education, and one of our past board members, him and I, we had lunch maybe 3 weeks ago, and he said to me, he said, you can pretend to care, but you can't pretend to show up.
Excellent point. That's an excellent point. And the other thing that I hear in your story too is this people seeing something in you.
Yes.
And taking the time to make sure that you got that break and that opportunity. Whether
Absolutely.
They were white or black,
Yes.
It didn't matter.
Yes.
That they saw something in you and they realized that you needed to make your way out of this situation, that you could contribute something. I think that's a lesson for all of us in terms
Absolutely.
of taking the time to be a mentor and taking the time when you see someone and see that potential that is there to be able to create that opportunity for somebody. So with that, we've still got about 10 minutes because I know you're going to want to ask him questions. I've got other questions, but I'm going to hold my fire on that and let you ask questions. I'm going to yield the floor now to the audience and let you ask some questions of Leonte.
Thank you for your transparency. I had a quick question. What do you do to contribute to the community around you as far as that reaching back out to pour into people like you or communities of children that may look like you or experience the experiences that you've had?
Yep. So I've done a few things over the years. I guess the most grassroots thing I did, I guess maybe 10 years ago, was I got 10 of my friends who grew up in different scenarios. Some, may have had more resources, some may have not. And basically, I got 10 guys together and I said, we got to go back and mentor 10 people. I mean, it was a very simple thing. And we had basically a monthly check-in around who and how we were doing that. And then we would bring all of our folks together and create exposure experiences. We would bring in different speakers, different, companies to sponsor us, et cetera. So that was one thing. And then another thing I do, I'm a very kind of grassroots guy. So my wife and I, we moved back to the South Side intentionally before we had kids. And the very first thing we did was we went back into the schools. So we went to the elementary schools. We went to maybe 3 elementary schools, a middle school, and a high school that served that particular community. And unfortunately, we found out that just about every single one of those schools we went to didn't have a PTA. And so my wife and I, we kind of took it upon ourselves to help the school kind of get the support they needed, and started kind of rallying around, getting not only parents to support the school, but the community to support the school. Because at the end of the day, if the schools improve, so by the way, the high school had at the time a 60% graduation rate, which means that 40% of the students were dropping out. 40% of the students dropping out, high crime community. In my mind, if we kind of came together as a community, we could help reduce crime, we could increase the graduation rate, and we could just do other things to make the community a place we want to live in. So I feel like I rambled a little bit there, but I got so many things. I helped create a nonprofit that went into the schools to create exposure trips for students. Basically, we selected some of the roughest schools in the metro area of Atlanta, and we created partnerships with Coca-Cola, my company, AT&T, et cetera. And we basically took groups of 20 students at a time to visit these professional environments to help them connect the dots. And when I say connect the dots, so you got to forgive me here. So I was visiting a school, and I asked, the students just a general question: what do you want to be when you grow up? One of the students said he wanted to be a doctor. My next natural question was, where are you going to med school? This guy stood up in front of the class and said, what's med school? And for me, it clicked. No wonder they're not performing well academically, because they can't connect the dots on how academics are going to help them from an economic standpoint and their quality of life as they get older. So the whole thing around this exposure thing that we created was basically, how do we become the bridge to help children who come from disadvantaged communities who may not have the parental guidance or the mentorship? How do we help them connect the dots and see a path to get to where they need to go? So, again, I apologize for rambling there.
That was a great answer.
Hi. It's so good to hear you come and give us your life story. And you are a dream come true for me. And I have a great big invitation for you to come to my hometown to tell that story again. But this is just a small question. But did you ever graduate from Morehouse?
I did.
Okay.
Yeah, it took a while. But eventually I did get out.
We got time for one more question. Do we have one more question? Oh, I went back.
Hi, I'm Freya Huffman, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Administrator for Chatham County Government. Excited to be here, hear your story. Big fan of entrepreneurship, you know, going through layoffs. We have to learn how to bounce back. That's a life story of mine I'm writing. I remember when I first got out of college, I did this thing called Carlton Sheets. Anybody remember that?
Ah, yeah.
It was this real estate kind of package in a box to try
Yeah.
to figure out how to do that. So
Late night.
Yes, I feel like real estate is something to definitely we all should be tapping into. But I do want to hear more so about how you scaled. Like when did you see you were going to the point that I'm learning this, but now I can scale this to become one of the biggest people, you know, in the world doing this business. So if you can tell me about that scaling moment and then how you started to multiply.
Yep. So growth has to be intentional, and for us, most of our growth has been super organic in the way of, again, Dallas brought me into the business and he tasked me with duplicating myself. And we have another partner, Dexter Warrior, who's a fantastic individual. Dallas and Dexter are total opposites, but they're peers. They're both in their 60s. So I've had the benefit of kind of sitting at both of their feet. And as we started to bring more people on, it literally just kind of happened organically. I would honestly say we just got to the point within the last 2 years of really pushing to scale up and grow. But I'll kind of rewind and I'll say our growth was all based on opportunities that were given by our clients that stretched us. So going back to, you know, providing opportunities, we had some amazing clients, AT&T, FedEx, and the federal government. Those were our first 3 major clients that gave us a chance. And through that opportunity, we were able to hire more people and also do work in multiple states. So, for example, our first 4 transactions with Federal Express, one was in Connecticut, one was in Pennsylvania, one was in Georgia, and the other was in Daytona Beach, Florida. And basically, we used those opportunities to help stretch us and grow us. I say that only because I feel like some companies, they try to grow too fast, or they try to grow or put this kind of amazing infrastructure in place before the opportunity is there. And I know they kind of, you can somewhat go down parallel tracks, but for us, the thing that helped us grow was, again, someone giving us an opportunity and then us taking that opportunity to build on. So, I hope I answered your question. I feel like and I will also say, we recently started to put infrastructure in place so that the company will outlast us. So I felt like historically, we've done a great job of growing organically and growing talent within, but we haven't spent a lot of time working on the business. We've mostly been kind of head down working in the business. So I would also say you have to separate the two. You have to have time to work in the business and make sure you got the right people in the right seats in the business to work in the business to keep the day-to-day things going. But you also got to take that time away to work on the business to make sure that you're growing in a way that's responsible and to make sure that, you know, you have a pathway to growth, if you will.
Leonte Benton, thank you so much for coming and sharing your story with us today. Give him a round of applause.